The park behind Maplewood Elementary wasn't particularly big or special. It had 2 old swings that creaked when the wind blew, a crooked seesaw, and a few benches that had lost their paint years ago. But to Lena, it was her safe place. Every afternoon after school, she stopped there with her backpack slung over one shoulder and her lunchbox in hand. It was the only time she could sit quietly, away from the chaos of the classroom, away from the whispers and stares that followed her in the hallways. Lena was 8 years old, small for her age, with messy black hair and wide, observant eyes. That seemed to take in more than they let on. She didn't have many friends. The other kids didn't quite understand her. Too quiet, too odd, too content sitting alone and reading during recess. At school, she blended into the background. At home, her mother worked double shifts to keep the lights on. So the park became her in-between world, where no one judged her and nothing demanded too much. On one particular Tuesday, with a peanut butter sandwich in hand, Lena took her usual seat on the bench under the oak tree. The late autumn sun filtered through the branches, casting moving shadows on her notebook as she flipped through doodles she'd made earlier that day. She was halfway through her sandwich when she felt it, that prickling sensation of being watched. She looked up. Across the patchy grass stood a dog. A small mutt, no taller than her knee, with dirty white fur and patches of brown on his ears and tail. He looked thin, almost frail, and one of his back legs didn't seem to support him properly. He didn't bark or move closer. He just stared, curiously. Cautiously, Lena blinked at him. The dog didn't flinch. His tail gave the tiniest wag. She glanced down at the rest of her sandwich, then back at him. "Are you hungry?" she asked softly. The dog tilted his head slightly as if trying to understand her words. Her mother had warned her not to approach stray animals. "They might be sick, Lena," she had said. "They could bite." But this dog didn't look threatening. He looked tired and hungry. Gently, Lena tore the remaining half of her sandwich in 2. She placed a piece near the bench and sat back slowly, watching. The dog didn't move at first, then hesitantly, he limped forward. Each step was careful, unsure. When he reached the food, he sniffed it, then looked up at her again. Their eyes met just for a moment, and Lena felt something unfamiliar twist in her chest. Not fear, not pity, something warmer. The dog devoured the sandwich piece quickly, then backed away, still watching her. Lena smiled. "You liked it, huh?" He didn't answer, of course, but his tail wagged a bit more this time before he turned and limped off toward the trees at the edge of the park. Lena watched him disappear, the smile still on her face. Something about the encounter clung to her, an invisible thread tying her to the little stray. That night she couldn't stop thinking about him. She wondered where he slept, whether he was cold. Did he have a name? Did someone miss him? The next morning, before leaving for school, she did something different. She slipped an extra sandwich into her backpack, just in case he came back. Lena could hardly concentrate at school the next day. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the scruffy little dog with the limp and watchful eyes, while her classmates giggled in groups or whispered secrets. During recess, Lena sat under the big maple tree at the far end of the playground, clutching her lunchbox tightly. Inside, beneath the usual sandwich and apple slices, was the extra one she'd made that morning, carefully wrapped in a napkin, and tucked away like a secret mission. When the final bell rang, Lena moved faster than she ever had. Her legs carried her down the cracked sidewalk, past the bakery and the convenience store, straight to the park. Her backpack bounced against her spine, but she didn't care. All she could think about was whether he'd be there. She rounded the corner, heart thudding, and then froze. He was already waiting. Dusty, as she would soon call him, stood near the bench where they'd first met. His tail wagged slowly when he spotted her. He was cautious still, standing back a few feet as she approached, but he didn't run. His eyes lit up with something gentle and familiar. Recognition. Lena sat down on the bench, her hands shaking slightly with excitement. She opened her lunchbox, unwrapped the sandwich, and placed the whole thing gently on the grass in front of her. "I saved this for you," she whispered. Dusty moved forward, limping slightly, but with more confidence than the day before. He sniffed the sandwich once, then looked up at her again before digging in. This time, when he finished, he didn't turn and leave. He sat down a few feet away, curling his body on the cold grass like he meant to stay a while. For a long time, Lena just sat with him. She talked quietly about her day, how the math test was too hard, how two boys laughed when she mispronounced a word during reading hour. She didn't cry, though her voice trembled once or twice. Dusty didn't move. His ears twitched every time she spoke, as if he was hanging on to every word. "You don't care that I'm weird, do you?" she asked him. He lifted his head and yawned, resting it back on his paws. That was answer enough. Day after day, the routine continued. Lena brought extra food. Dusty showed up like clockwork, waiting near the tree or under the bushes. Sometimes he wagged his tail and barked once when he saw her. Other times he stayed curled up until she got close, but he was always there. The bond between them grew, quiet but unbreakable. Lena started drawing pictures of him in her notebook, first shaky and awkward, then more confident as she captured the way his left ear flopped lower than the right, or the swirl of fur on his back. She even tried writing a story about him once. The Brave Park Dog, she titled it, though she never showed it to anyone. At home, her mother noticed a change. Lena seemed lighter, quicker to smile. She hummed while brushing her teeth. Set the dinner table without being asked. When asked what had changed, Lena only shrugged and said, "Nothing." But in her heart, she knew everything had changed. Dusty wasn't just a dog. He was her friend. The only one who listened without laughing, who never asked questions or pointed fingers. In his quiet presence, she found something she hadn't realized she needed: acceptance. She never tried to take him home. Something told her Dusty belonged to the park, or maybe to no one. But still, every time she left, she whispered, "See for you tomorrow," like a promise, and every day until that one unexpected afternoon Dusty kept it. The week had started like all the others. Lena packed 2 sandwiches, one for herself, one for Dusty, tucking them into her lunchbox with care. She even added a strip of leftover chicken she'd saved from dinner, wrapping it neatly in foil. He deserves something special, she told herself as she zipped the box shut. But when she arrived at the park that afternoon, the bench was empty. At first, Lena thought maybe he was just late. She took her usual seat, opened her notebook and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The shadows lengthened. A chilly breeze danced through the grass. Still no sign of him. "Dusty," she called softly, glancing toward the cluster of trees where he usually emerged from. Nothing stirred. She stood up and walked around the park, checking every bush behind the old seesaw under the swing set. Her small voice called his name again and again. "Dusty, are you there?" But the silence answered her every time. Lena sat back down on the bench, her uneaten sandwich heavy in her lap. A strange knot formed in her chest, a mix of worry and confusion. Had he gotten hurt? Had someone taken him? Had he left? The next day she came again, same time, same place. Her eyes scanned every corner of the park. She even brought a scarf from home, one that smelled like her, and laid it on the ground in case Dusty needed help finding his way back. Still, he didn't come. By the 3rd day, Lena's steps had lost their bounce. Her hands felt heavier, her lunch untouched. She stopped drawing in her notebook. Her eyes kept drifting to the edge of the park with quiet desperation. Dusty's absence carved an ache deeper than she expected. He wasn't just a stray dog anymore. He was her companion, her listener, her safe place in a world that often felt too loud and too cruel. And now that he was gone, it was as if a part of her had gone missing too. At school, Lena was quieter than ever. When the teacher asked her a question, she nodded or shrugged instead of speaking. Her classmates barely noticed, except for one girl who muttered, "She's even weirder this week." Lena heard it, but she didn't react. What did it matter? That night at dinner, her mother finally asked, "Sweetheart, is something bothering you? You've barely touched your food all week." Lena looked down at her plate. The mashed potatoes blurred in her vision. She wanted to tell her. "About Dusty. about how he waited for her every day, how he listened like no one else ever did. But the words got stuck. What if her mother didn't understand? So she just shook her head. Her mother sighed, reached across the table, and gently squeezed her hand. "I'm here if you want to talk, okay?" Lena nodded. The next day she still brought the sandwich. She still stopped at the park, but this time she didn't sit on the bench. She walked straight to the oak tree and placed the food down on the roots, next to the scarf she'd left days earlier. She crouched beside it and whispered, "Please come back. I miss you." The wind rustled the leaves overhead. She waited, but Dusty didn't come, and for the first time in many months Lena walked home with an empty heart and full hands. 3 more days passed. Lena still came to the park every afternoon, holding on to hope the way a shipwrecked sailor clings to driftwood. She left fresh food each time, sandwiches, biscuits, even a slice of cheese, but the pile remained untouched, growing stale in the cold. By Saturday morning, her chest ached from trying not to cry. She walked to the park early, telling herself it would be her last try. "If he's not there today," she whispered, "I'll stop hoping." She reached the familiar bench and stopped short. The sandwich was gone. Not torn or scattered like birds had gotten to it. Gone. Cleanly, as if eaten by someone who knew it was meant for them. Her eyes darted to the oak tree. The scarf she'd left behind was still there, crumpled slightly as if something had curled up on top of it. Lena's heart pounded. "Dusty?" And then from the tree line he appeared. He looked thinner than before and a little dirtier, but there was no mistaking him. The limp, the tilted ear, the cautious eyes that brightened the moment they met hers. "Dusty." Lena dropped her bag and ran forward. Dusty wagged his tail slowly, not wildly, not excitedly, but like he'd saved what energy he had just to make it to her. She dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around him gently, burying her face into his matted fur. "I thought you were gone forever," she whispered, and for the first time in days, she felt warmth bloom in her chest. He didn't lick her face or bark, but he stayed there, nestled against her like he had never left. After the long embrace, Lena pulled back slightly. "Where did you go?" she asked softly. Dusty stepped back and turned. Then, to Lena's surprise, he began walking away from her, toward the trees. He paused once and looked over his shoulder, like he wanted her to follow. She hesitated, then picked up her bag and followed him. The trail led her into the wooded area behind the park, where the trees grew closer and the air felt cooler. Lena had never gone this far before. She always stayed where the playground was visible. But Dusty limped ahead with purpose, stopping every few feet to make sure she was still behind him. After several minutes, he stopped. They had reached a small clearing. At first, Lena didn't understand what he was showing her. There was nothing there, just a collapsed cardboard box, some dry leaves, and then she saw it, a tiny movement inside the box, a faint sound. Lena stepped closer, kneeling beside the box. Inside, nestled against a crumpled sweater, were 3 small puppies. Their eyes were barely open. One of them was suckling on what looked like a torn glove. Another let out a soft whimper. She looked up at Dusty, stunned. He sat down beside the box, tail brushing the leaves, watching her, waiting. You brought me to them," she asked, voice trembling. Dusty didn't move. Lena looked back at the puppies. They were thin. One of them shivered. They needed help, food, warmth, protection, and somehow, Dusty had known she was the one who would care. A tear slid down her cheek. "You're not just a stray," she whispered. "You're their dad." She pulled off her jacket and gently wrapped it around the box. Her hands shook, but not from the cold. From something else, wonder, responsibility, a strange, heavy joy. "I'll help them," she said. "I promise." Dusty rested his head on her knee, and in that quiet clearing, something unspoken passed between them, an understanding, a trust, forged not in words, but in actions, sacrifice, and return. He hadn't just come back, he had come back with a gift that would change everything. Lena couldn't carry all 3 puppies and her school bag at once. She tried tucking them inside her jacket, but they wriggled and mewled too much. Dusty stood beside her, watching with quiet urgency, as if he too knew time was precious. "I'll be right back," she whispered to him. "Stay here, keep them warm." She bolted out of the woods, heart thundering, feet slapping the pavement as she sprinted the 4 blocks home. Her mother was still at work. Good. That gave her time. She grabbed a laundry basket, lined it with old towels, and stuffed a few small food containers and a water bottle inside. Then she ran back, faster than she thought her legs could move. Dusty hadn't moved. He was lying protectively in front of the box, his body curled around it like a furry wall. "They're okay," she said breathlessly. "I'm going to take them somewhere safe." With great care, Lena transferred the tiny pups into the basket. They were lighter than expected, all bones and soft skin. She covered them with the warmest towel and poured water into a plastic lid. Dusty lapped them up but kept glancing between her and the puppies, like he wasn't sure what would happen next. "You can come," she said softly. "It's not far." And so, with Dusty limping alongside her and the puppies nestled in the basket she held tightly to her chest, Lena walked home through quiet streets. Her world forever changed. Once inside, she set the basket in the corner of her room. Her bedroom had always felt too empty, plain white walls, a creaky bed and a chipped bookshelf. But now it buzzed with purpose, life, hope. Dusty paced near the door at first, unsure. Lena coaxed him in gently, then laid out a soft rug for him beside the basket. He settled down slowly, keeping one tired eye on the little ones as they squirmed and nuzzled in their towel nest. That night, Lena fed the pup-soaked kibble she mashed with water. She had to use a spoon, helping them lick it bit by bit. It was messy, awkward, but she was patient. Dusty supervised every movement. Later, she opened her notebook and began writing. Not a story this time, but a plan. A feeding schedule. A list of things she'd need. Puppy formula. Blankets. A real pet bed. Her handwriting was shaky, but determined. The next morning, she woke up earlier than usual to feed them again before school. When her mother knocked on the door and peeked in, her eyes widened. "Lena, what is this?" Lena froze. She hadn't figured out how to explain it yet. Her heart thumped as she stood between the puppies and her mum, shielding them almost instinctively. "I found them," she said. "They were alone in the woods. I had to help." Her mother stepped further into the room, eyebrows knitting. "All of them?" Lena nodded. "And the big one, Dusty, he's their dad, I think. He brought me to them." Her mother looked from the trembling puppies to Dusty, who didn't bark or move, just lifted his tired eyes to meet hers. She sighed. "Sweetheart, this is a lot. Puppies need care. Real care. And we can't afford a vet or—" "I'll do it," Lena said quickly. "I'll take care of them. I'll use my lunch money if I have to, please." There was silence. A long one. Then her mother crossed the room, crouched beside the basket, and gently touched one of the puppies. It whimpered, softly, and nestled closer to the towel. Her expression softened. "I'll make some calls," she murmured. "See if we can get help. Maybe there's a free clinic, but they stay in your room." Lena nodded, eyes brimming. She had done it. Dusty's gift, the fragile lives he'd trusted her with, was safe now. And as she glanced over at Dusty, curled protectively near his pups, she whispered, "You picked the right person." News travels faster in small neighborhoods than anyone expects. By the end of the week, the girl who rarely spoke had become the center of quiet conversation. It started when Mrs. Pennington, the retired librarian, spotted Lena walking Dusty near the edge of the park. He was limping, she told her walking group, but that dog walked beside her like he belonged. By Monday, whispers had reached the school hallways. "You know that shy girl, Lena," someone muttered during recess. "She rescued puppies." Lena kept her head down, focusing on her schoolwork, and hurrying home as fast as she could every afternoon. The puppies were growing, stronger, eating more, crying louder, even tumbling over each other with sleepy clumsiness. She named them quietly. The grey one was Pebble, the smallest she called Dot, and the loudest, who barked at his own tail, became Bristle. Dusty watched over them like a sentry. He rarely left their side, except to follow Lena on her walks to the park and back. His limp never improved much, but he bore it with quiet dignity. One rainy afternoon, Lena took a shortcut through the alley behind Mr. Kwan's hardware store. Dusty stopped in his tracks. His nose twitched. Then he veered off toward a rusted trash bin and began pawing at a pile of soggy cardboard. "Dusty," she called, stepping closer. He unearthed something. A torn collar, faded red, the tag still, clinging by a bent ring. Lena crouched beside him and picked it up. The tag read, "Cooper, 117 Maple Lane." Her brow furrowed. "Is this you?" Dusty sat down, letting out a soft huff. His eyes met hers, calm and unblinking. She had never seen him react this way before. That night, Lena looked up the address. 117 Maple Lane was only 6 blocks away, close enough that Dusty could have wandered from there if he had once belonged to someone. She hesitated to tell her mother. What if someone was looking for him? What if she had to give him back? But the next day, curiosity overpowered fear. After school, she walked to 117 Maple Lane with Dusty at her side, the collar in her pocket. The house was old but neat. A small white fence lined the yard, and faded chalk drawings covered the sidewalk. There was a toy truck tipped over near the porch. She knocked gently. A woman in her 30s answered, holding a baby on her hip. Her eyes fell immediately on Dusty, and widened. "Oh my God," Lena swallowed. Did you lose a dog?" The woman stepped forward, almost dropping the baby. "That's Cooper. We thought he was dead." Dusty, Cooper, didn't react. He stood still, tail low, ears twitching. The woman reached toward him cautiously, but he took a step back. "I don't understand," she murmured. "He ran off. Months ago, after the fire." "Fire?" Lena asked softly. The woman nodded, voice trembling. "Our garage caught fire last winter. My husband tried to save the dogs. We had 3, but only one made it. Cooper ran. We searched for days. He was limping already, and we thought—" She trailed off, her voice catching. Dusty looked up at Lena, then at the woman. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. Then he turned and gently bumped his head into Lena's leg. The woman took a breath. "He came back?" Lena nodded. "Shai brought me to his puppies. I've been taking care of them." The woman blinked. "Puppies?" Lena smiled faintly. "Yeah, I think he found a second chance." There was a long pause. The baby on the woman's hip burbled and tugged at her shirt. Finally, the woman whispered, "Maybe he's home now, just a different kind." Dusty, Cooper, leaned against Lena's knee and closed his eyes. In that moment, there was no need to decide. He already had. The next morning, Lena woke up to soft yips and the sound of tiny paws skittering across her floor. Pebble had figured out how to climb out of the basket and was proudly exploring her rug, with Bristle clumsily following. Dot, still the smallest, was curled beside Dusty's tail, fast asleep. It was hard to believe just a week ago they were cold and helpless in the woods. Her mom knocked once before entering, holding her phone. "You've been posted," she said, a smile tugging at her lips. "What?" Lena blinked. Her mother sat beside her and turned the screen toward her. There on the neighborhood Facebook group was a photo of Lena and Dusty, taken by Mrs. Pennington the day they'd passed the park. The caption read, "Shy girl, stray dog, 3 puppies, and a story that gave me chills. These 2 saved each other." Below it were dozens of comments. I saw them. The dog looked so gentle. "How can we help? Does she need food? Blankets? Vet support?" Lena stared at the screen in disbelief. "People care." Her mother smirked. "You'd be surprised. One act of kindness doesn't stay small for long." By afternoon, strangers started knocking at their door. The first was Mr. Kwan from the hardware store. "Old dog bed," he said, lifting a large bundle. "We used it for our cat, but he prefers boxes." Next came Anna from the bakery down the street, holding a small box of fresh rolls for Lena and a bag of meat scraps for Dusty. "For the heroes," she winked. The biggest surprise came at sunset. A white van pulled up with the words Willow Vet Mobile Services written on the side. A tall woman in scrubs stepped out, smiling. "I'm Dr. Mara," she said. "You must be Lena." Lena nodded cautiously. "I heard you've been doing some serious rescue work," the vet said warmly. "Mind if I check on the pups?" Within minutes, her bedroom was transformed into a mini exam room. Dr. Mara gently examined each puppy, weighing them, checking their teeth, listening to their tiny hearts. "They're a little underweight but strong," she said. "You've done an amazing job." Dusty sat beside the vet the whole time, calm but alert. When she gently lifted his front leg to examine the limp, he didn't flinch. "Old injury," she muttered. "Likely from trauma. He's been through a lot." She looked at Lena. "He trusts you, that's rare." Lena's throat tightened. She scratched behind Dusty's ear. "He found me first." The vet stayed for nearly an hour, leaving behind puppy formula, vitamins, and her number, in case anything changed. By the end of the evening, Lena's room looked nothing like it once had. It was warm, lively, and full of noise. Puppy squeaks, tail thumps, and the soft breathing of Dusty curled at the foot of her bed. Later that night, her mother came in and sat beside her. "You know, I was scared when I first saw them. Scared of how much it would cost, how much work it would be, but I see it now." Lena looked up. "See what?" Her mother smiled. "You, the real you." Lena's eyes shimmered. She had never heard her mother say something like that before. "You're brave," she added, "and kind and stronger than you know." That night, Lena wrote something new in her notebook. Not a story, not a list, just a sentence. "It only takes one small act of love to change everything." She looked over at Dusty, who had raised his head watching her, and she smiled. Tomorrow they would return to the park, but not as just a girl and a stray, as a family. The following Saturday, the sun filtered through the trees with a gentle golden hue as Lena walked to the park with Dusty beside her, and the puppies nestled in a carrier, slung carefully over her shoulder. The once familiar path now felt like something sacred, filled with memories and meaning. It had been 2 weeks since Dusty returned with the puppies, and in that short time, Lena's world had shifted completely. She wasn't invisible at school anymore. Neighbors greeted her by name, and most importantly, she had found something bigger than herself to care for. They reached the same oak tree where everything had started. Lena laid down a soft blanket in the grass, letting the puppies tumble around in the sun. Pebble wrestled with Bristle, while little Dot snuggled against Dusty's paw. The big dog didn't flinch. He simply watched, his tail sweeping slowly, proudly. A small crowd gathered nearby, familiar faces from the neighborhood. Mrs. Pennington had brought a thermos of tea and lawn chairs. Mr. Kwan carried a camera and snapped a picture when the puppies began play-fighting. Even Dr. Mara showed up with a few chew toys and a medical folder tucked under her arm. Lena looked around, a little overwhelmed. She'd never been the center of attention before. Dr. Mara approached and crouched beside her. "I wanted to let you know," she said gently. "I looked up the name on Dusty's old tag. The woman you visited, she filed a report about him months ago. Legally, he was considered abandoned after the fire." Lena's stomach turned. "Does that mean—" Dr. Mara smiled. "It means if you're willing, we can officially register him as yours. No one's claiming him. And from what I saw, he's already made his choice." Lena looked at Dusty. He was dozing lightly, nose resting between his paws as the puppies climbed over him. A stray, no more. A guardian, a father, and hers. Tears filled her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, please." Cheers erupted as the papers were signed right there in the park. Mr. Kwan took another photo, Lena hugging Dusty, the puppies pawing at her feet, and the community smiling behind her. But as the laughter and chatter faded and the sun dipped lower, Lena noticed something. Dusty wasn't getting up. He hadn't moved when Bristle barked in his ear or when Dot nipped at his tail. He was breathing, but slower. His body, so strong in presence, now seemed tired. Dr. Mara knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his back. Her expression softened into something between sadness and reverence. "He's old," she said, quietly. "Older than we thought. He's been holding on for them." Lena's breath caught. But he's okay, right? He'll be okay? Dr. Mara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she said, "Some dogs. They have just enough strength to finish their purpose, and once they know their family is safe, they rest." Lena knelt beside him, placing her hands on his thick fur. Dusty opened his eyes just slightly and looked up at her. There was no fear, no pain, just peace. She leaned down and whispered, "Thank you for finding me." That night, Dusty passed, away in his sleep, surrounded by those he loved. The next morning, the entire park was silent. Lena's mother helped her bury him beneath the old oak tree, the place where everything had started. Mr. Kwan carved a small wooden sign, "Dusty, a true friend, a father, a hero." People left flowers. A few kids brought dog toys. Even strangers came to read the sign and pet the now growing puppies, who never strayed far from the tree. Lena visited every day, sometimes to sit in silence, sometimes to read aloud from her notebook, and sometimes just to whisper that she was still trying to be the person he believed she could be. Because Dusty hadn't just saved those puppies, he had saved her too. And that, Lena knew, was his greatest gift. The end.